What's up, nerds, and welcome to the Nerd History Podcast, a proud part of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network and your home for celebrating the nostalgia that shaped nerd culture. Today, I'm Radio Matt, the Director of Content and Resources for Love Thy Nerd, and joining me today is my own personal must-see TV, Deidra.
Hello. Not the usual greeting.
Today, we are taking a look at some of the most memorable sitcom finales of all time. Arguably, the biggest four finales in NBC history. In a little bit, Deidra and I are going to talk all about sitcom finales. But first, let's prepare to say goodbye. For decades, NBC wasn't just a television network. It was the network. From the 1980s through the early 2010s, it defined appointment television with a lineup of legendary sitcoms. But for every beloved pilot and classic episode, there comes a bittersweet moment that fans both anticipate and dread: the series finale. This is the nerd history of NBC sitcom finales. Look at how four of the most iconic sitcoms ended their runs, why those endings mattered, and what they said about the characters and the audiences that loved them. We're talking about Cheers, Seinfeld, Friends, and The Office. Some bowed out gracefully, some left us confused, but all of them became part of television history. And today we're going to start where everybody knew your name. Welcome to the Nerd History Podcast. On May 20th, 1993, over 80 million people tuned in to watch Sam Malone close up the bar one last time in the Cheers finale, One for the Road. That night, the show that helped launch the modern sitcom era poured one final drink, and it was one to remember. The episode kicks off with a bang. Diane Chambers returns to Boston after a 6-year absence. If you followed Cheers from the beginning, you know their relationship was central to the early seasons. The finale wastes no time to bring Diane and Sam back together. A whirlwind rekindling leads to an impulsive decision. Sam and Diane will get married and move to Los Angeles. Yeah, that fast. But the sitcom magic doesn't quite hold up to real life. On their flight to LA, they realize they're chasing an old dream. Nostalgia isn't enough. They part ways again. In the end, Sam returns to the bar, not broken, but accepting. When a mysterious customer knocks at the locked door, Sam straightens a picture of Geronimo on the wall and says gently,
"Sorry, we're closed."
It's poetic, quiet, and deeply fitting. Cheers wasn't about grand gestures, it was about the rhythm of regulars, the comfort of familiar voices, and the reality that life goes on. The finale gave us closure, without closing the door entirely. Fast forward 5 years to May 18th, 1998. NBC aired the final episode of Seinfeld. Over 76 million people watched and then immediately started arguing. Titled simply The Finale, this took a meta, legalistic approach to saying goodbye to Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer. The gang finds themselves stranded in a small Massachusetts town after Kramer's unusual antics caused their private jet to make an emergency landing. There was a lot of setup. As they kill time, they witness a man getting mugged, and instead of helping, they film it and make jokes. Big mistake. Under a new Good Samaritan law, they're arrested for failing to help. And suddenly, the entire final episode becomes a courtroom drama, with dozens of former guest stars testifying about what terrible people our main four characters are. This wasn't a sentimental send-off, it was a brutal roast. They're convicted and sent to prison, and the show ends with Jerry doing stand-up in a jail jumpsuit.
So, anyone from Cell Block D?
I am.
I'll talk slower.
No redemption, no growth, just Seinfeld. The finale was controversial then and still is. But here's the thing, it was consistent. Seinfeld never pretended to have heart. It was a show about nothing, and its final joke was, essentially, these people were always awful, and we loved them anyway. On May 6, 2004, Friends said goodbye with an emotional finale that brought a decade of romantic tension, inside jokes, and latte-sipping loyalty to a heartfelt close. The two-part episode, titled The Last One, focuses on the biggest question still hanging over the show. Will Ross and Rachel finally get it right? Spoiler, yes. Rachel is about to leave for Paris to start a new job. Ross realizes, surprise, surprise, that he still loves her. After a few sitcom hurdles, he rushes to the airport to declare his feelings, but she gets on the plane. Then, in one of the most quoted moments in TV history, Ross returns home heartbroken, only to hear her voice on his answering machine. She got off the plane. Finally, they're together. Meanwhile, Monica and Chandler welcome their adopted twins and prepare to move to the suburbs. The group takes one final walk through the empty apartment. Monica sets her key on the counter. One by one, the others do the same. It ends with Chandler asking,
Where?
in response to a suggestion to grab coffee. Friends delivered exactly what fans hoped for. A mix of tearful goodbyes, meaningful resolutions, and hope for the future. No major surprises, no character assassinations, just 6 friends growing up and moving on. May 16th, 2013, The Office ended its 9-season run with a finale simply titled Finale. Set a year after the in-universe documentary has aired, the Dunder Mifflin crew reunites in Scranton for Dwight and Angela's wedding. And yes, Michael Scott returns for one act, one perfect, unforgettable act. Michael, now happily married and a father, appears as Dwight's surprise best man. He doesn't dominate the finale, he doesn't need to. One line,
"That's what she said,"
was enough to bring fans to tears. The episode focuses on closure. Andy reflects on his downward spiral and eventual redemption. Erin reunites with her birth parents. Kevin's running a bar. Stanley's retired. Oscar's running for office. Everyone has changed, but the core feels familiar. Jim and Pam have sold their house and are preparing to move. Pam thanks the documentary crew and the audience for watching her story unfold. The final talking head is perfect. The characters marvel that their lives were worthy of filming in the first place.
There's a lot of beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point?
The Office finale is gentle, reflective, and funny. A rare balancing act that left even the most jaded fans satisfied. Before we wrap up, let's take a quick look at a few other NBC sitcoms that left their mark with unforgettable finales. Shows that may have not had Seinfeld-level hype, but delivered thoughtful, memorable goodbyes. First up was Frasier with Goodnight Seattle in 2004. Frasier Crane's finale is as refined as the character himself. As his family moves forward, Martin remarrying, Niles and Daphne having a child, Frasier takes a final leap of faith. The show ends with him arriving in Chicago instead of San Francisco, chasing love once more. A classy, poetic farewell to a cerebral sitcom. Parks and Rec ended in 2015 with One Last Ride. With its optimistic flash-forward structure, Parks and Rec gave us joyful peeks into each character's future. Ron finds serenity in nature, Donna thrives in business, and Leslie, well, she's clearly destined for greatness. It's hopeful, funny, and a perfect reflection of the show's warm heart. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air finished in 1996 with I Done. The Banks family moves out, leaving Will to reflect on how far he's come. The final shot of him standing alone in the empty living room is both quiet and powerful, a heartfelt ending to a show that balanced comedy with cultural honesty. And there are more. 30 Rock gave us surreal but sweet goodbye. Scrubs, even with its network shift and final season that we don't actually talk about because it ended. It ended in season 8, and it offered a beautiful send-off with my finale. One of the most perfect finales ever, honestly. The Good Place went out on an ambitious and deeply emotional note, exploring what it means to find peace and say goodbye on your own terms. Superstore wrapped with a heartfelt thank you for shopping at Cloud 9. NBC sitcoms have given us so many lives to laugh with and to say goodbye to. And in every finale, there's a little bit of truth. That change is inevitable, but the stories we've shared stay with us. NBC sitcom finales tell us as much about their eras as they do their characters. Cheers showed us that sometimes you stay where you belong, even if the past knocks on your door. Seinfeld reminded us that not all endings are warm and fuzzy, and that's okay. Friends made us believe that love, growth, and coffee with your crew could carry you through anything. And The Office reminded us that even the dullest workplace is full of stories worth telling. In an age of streaming and binges, series finales don't always feel like events anymore. But for those who gathered around their TVs to say goodbye with millions of others, they were cultural touchstones. They marked the end of an era. They made us laugh, cry, and sometimes argue. They reminded us that goodbyes, like sitcoms, are rarely perfect, but they're part of the story. Thanks for watching the nerd history of NBC sitcom finales. Now let's grab a coffee.
Where?
Welcome back, and it's time to talk about it. So, sitcom finales, 4 of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Cheers, Seinfeld, Friends, and The Office. Of course, there's a lot more, and we touched on some of those in the little mini doc there, like Scrubs, The Good Place, Frasier, Parks and Recreation, all really good. A lot of good ones. More recently, Superstore.
Yeah, I don't think I watched that one.
Have you not watched the finale of Superstore?
No, because I kind of just stopped watching it. I got mad at it, so I was
That's
just
right.
Like,
well, it ended well. It was one of those where they're like, we're going to give you everything you want and end it like a fairy tale kind of thing.
well, then maybe I'll watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll love it. Yeah. How do you think sitcom finales, like as events, have changed since streaming has become the main focus?
I think they're planned better. Like, didn't it used to be like you didn't really know if it was their last season? And then, like, then they realized it, so they'd have to kind of pivot at the end and give it an ending.
I mean, I will say that still does happen. I guess it kind of depends on the streaming service. Netflix is notorious for just like, you know what, I think we're done.
Okay.
And there's quite a few that are still... I guess what I'm more thinking of is just how it's no longer a
tune in at this time.
like a society-wide
watching.
event.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you think about MASH,
Right.
there's a reason it's still the most watched TV show episode live watchers ever. Because as time has gone on, our collective consciousness has kind of shifted into, well, we'll watch whatever we want whenever. This episode will release on this day, and you just watch it. And like, it's not the same thing. It's like watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade rerun later in the day. It's like, well, this is fun, but this is not happening live, you know? And I know technically, depending on where you are, it's not happening live because they started at the same time and every time zone, not at the same time.
Right.
Across
We don't
the
got to
board.
get up early when they're really starting it.
But
in New
still,
York.
it feels like it's live to you because it makes sense to be live at that moment.
Do they release like finales even separately from like the whole season? You know, because usually it's like, here's a season.
Oh, yeah, they've kind of stopped doing that on the streaming services for the most part, of just releasing everything at once, because they've kind of found that the episodic thing both keeps it in the consciousness of pop culture for a little bit longer and prevents like burnout. Because
I get that.
especially when you think of the seasons, because even the comedies are doing this now. A lot of them, they're only like 8 episodes long. Like the Frasier revival,
Right.
Each season's only like we have 2 full seasons of that, and it doesn't even equal 1 full season of the original show.
Right.
And I don't know, it kind of takes away the, I don't know, with a full season of a show that aired weekly that you had to tune into, you felt so invested in it. And it was for like 9 months of a year.
You felt like a part of it.
Yeah. And then it was gone for a few months over the summer, and you had time to miss it and then get really excited when it was coming back for the next season. And here it's like, okay, we're dropping these 8 episodes. You know, you have 2 months of new episodes, and then we'll see you again in another year, maybe 2 or 3 more years before we get the next batch of 8 episodes recorded. And so I feel like we're so scattered with most of these. And then we still have the ones that air like on the basic channels, the 3-letter channels. But even they are like, it'll be up on streaming in 2 days. And so who cares if you miss it? There's no taping it anymore. There's no excitement of like, oh my gosh, I got to be at home at this time. And so there's no urgency, and therefore those things just don't become events anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little bit sad. I don't remember like the hubbub around like the Office finale, even though it was an appointment watching thing. But I do remember the hubbub around the Seinfeld finale.
Yeah.
Which, well, we'll talk about that here in a minute. But when you think of a sitcom finale, what is something that like defines that for you? Like, what do you expect to be a part of it no matter what? Across all sitcom finales, honestly. Like, what do you need? What does it mean to you?
It needs to feel final.
Like, do you need a solid ending?
I would like one. Yeah.
You don't like an ambiguous, we'll still leave you on a note of what's happening next?
It depends. Like the Frasier one, I liked that.
Yeah.
See, and
that did leave you on that.
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening next.
Yeah.
Cheers even. Cheers did that. Cheers was Diane had come back after 6 years being gone, and Sam and Diane just rekindled this whirlwind. Oh my gosh, this is meant to be. Let's go get married. And then they realize, oh no, this is just nostalgia. We don't really love each other. We're not really meant for each other. And it just ends with Sam like going back to the bar.
Right.
And just realizing, okay, this is where I am. Which, is a good ending, but it's not the ending. It's not Sam and Diane getting together.
Right.
Which you would think is kind of the trope, but
Right.
it really hasn't been a solid trope in a lot of shows, even classic shows. Because I initially thought that maybe this was like a relatively new trend of not giving people what they expect at the end.
Oh, but
it's really not. Like, they really have done these kind of, well, maybe it's not the happiest ending, or maybe the happy ending is completely different than you expected it. Seinfeld played into several of those tropes, though, kind of all at once, as we were at the point where they're on a private jet. Kramer's hopping up and down trying to get water out of his ear, accidentally crashes into the cockpit, knocks the pilot out, and they start nosediving into the earth. And so we think, and it was coming up, I mean, we'll talk about the run length of that anyway, but it was coming up on the standard length of an episode at this point. And so they're like, oh my gosh, are they ending it with them going to crash?
Dying.
And then also, as they're imminently crashing, Elaine and Jerry both are saying, I have something I need to tell you. And Elaine says, no, let me say it first. I've always, we're leveling out. We're leveling out. And then they never revisit even as a kid. So they didn't die, and they didn't admit their love for each other. Oh, gosh. So you do prefer tying up loose ends to room for interpretation for the most part.
Yeah.
Do you want the couple to get together? You want
I want the current story to be ending, but you can leave it open for their future.
Okay, so you want a solid ending to what we've had already. And then you're okay with a tease for what could possibly come next, and you build that in your brain.
The Office, Jim and Pam moving to this new adventure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I get that. Okay. I think that's nice. I don't care for ones that are completely ambiguous, where it's like, okay, and you don't even get really I'm not saying ones that don't get one. I'm just saying, like, all right, this is the finale, and nothing's gonna change, and it's bye.
Right.
Like, here we are. It's like, you have to have some sort of change. Something has to feel like it's over. Like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they all move out of the mansion.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's a cool deal.
The point of the story is you're telling us a story of these people in this time of their lives. I feel like you should close that chapter.
I agree. So let's talk about the Seinfeld one a little bit. So Seinfeld was billed with the news that no one knows how long it's going to air, like how long the episode runtime is.
Oh,
which I remember that was that was really cool. It's like, seriously, it's just tune in at this time and find out how long it's going to go.
Wow.
And I think they did that for that exact reason of, you don't know when it's going to end. So here, this is happening. Could this be the last scene? Could it? And then it's not.
Right.
Which I think was brilliant. So it teased all those tropes. And then most of it was like a cameo-filled courtroom scene where instead of doing just like a standard flashback kind of segment, they have all of these characters from previous episodes going all the way back to the first season come on and tell all the horrible things that these people did. And it ends with them in prison. There's a camera pull back from them sitting in a cell directly after being charged. And then the final scene is Jerry giving stand up in prison to a very, very lukewarm crowd of inmates. and I remember we were going on, I think it was a choir trip in junior high. You weren't there, but it was junior high. And I was talking to my choir teacher, Miss McFarling, about it because she had been talking about it in class the other day, like we were excited to watch it. I was like, "Hey, what did you think of the Seinfeld finale?" And she said, "It was awful." And I'm like, "What?" Because I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was hilarious as the teenager I was. She's like, "It was awful. I can't believe that that's how they ended it." And I realized, over the years, like just how divided people really were over that. And I really think looking back on it, it's aged better because number one, it was a total flip of what you would expect, which that wasn't common. Like, not giving you exactly what you want, like not giving you Sam and Diane, but giving you Sam alone in his bar, realizing that he's happy there. That's different than what you expected.
Right.
But
right.
for Seinfeld, you expected something. You just didn't know what it was. And then when you got it, you're like, oh, this isn't a typical finale. So, not so much a question, but this feels like the part where they were really starting to break the conventions of a sitcom finale to set up something totally absurd. And that has happened several more times in other sitcoms, but none of them has been as popular as Seinfeld was. Parks and Rec went unconventional.
I just didn't like the last season at all.
Last season was weird. I mean, I understand the decision because it was all based around not wanting to have baby actors. And I think it was morally, like that was a moral decision. Like, we don't want to have like tiny little babies
being
having
held.
their lives uprooted. So let's jump forward 3 years, I think it was. And so their children are all 3.
No, their kids were like way older.
Oh, no. It started with them just being like 3.
But
then that episode
just
kept going
jumping.
forward.
That's right.
All the way to like space time.
That's right. That's right.
Like that was what was weird.
Yeah.
And it's like,
was
okay, it's
different.
like we were kind of getting a real thing. And then it just was like, oh, okay, let's jump forward where we're on our space train to who knows where. That is kind of awkward. It was a goofy show, but it was still somewhat grounded in reality. And that really took it.
Yeah.
Because it had to be an interpretation of what the future would be.
Right.
But only 3 years in the future. And then they had to build on that, what they had already built.
But it was almost like the build in technology and where the world had advanced kind of took over the story of the characters.
Yeah, it was,
It
was awkward. And I always disliked the series, or like even when movies do this, where the previous season or the previous movie ended with this like happy ending, especially if it's like a relationship. And then the next season or the next movie starts with, oh, they broke up and had this horrible, thing and they hate each other now. Like they did that in National Treasure. I remember really being mad that National Treasure 2 started with them divorcing and splitting up assets and stuff.
Right.
And that was just their excuse to have them have to realize, oh, they love each other all along. But like it just felt like I didn't want to go through that again. I wanted them to be a couple in this movie. And so when we started off the last season with Ron and Leslie being like mortal enemies, we're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Why would we do this all of a sudden?
Because she had been growing on him for how many years, and he had been building as a character, and then they just like, we hate each other. Yeah.
And so the finale kind of just felt okay. Well, I'm glad it's over. Cheers was kind of before our time. Seinfeld, like I said, I watched it as a teenager. I didn't understand most of the humor at the time anyway. Friends, I didn't quite find so memorable. A lot of people did, but I wasn't super invested in that show.
Yeah.
I feel like you weren't either, right? Like we've seen it all.
Yeah, I've seen it all.
We owned all the DVDs at one point because we were hoarders of DVDs. But okay. They got together. Yay.
Yeah.
The couple that is very annoying through the whole show got together in the end, and we really needed it. We really needed Ross and Rachel.
Well.
Okay.
And with how many times they got together. And I mean, who knows what happened after that.
They were on a break. But do you remember the first time watching The Office finale?
No. Did we watch it live?
Or
did we record it and watch it?
Yeah, I mean, we watched it roughly when it came out. I don't know if it was the night that it came on. I feel like it would have been. I feel like we would have tried to if we could watch it as it aired. But I guess Like, do you remember
How long
any
ago
of the
was
feelings?
this?
This was 2013, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, before kids. Wow.
Before
Okay.
kids. Yeah.
But were we here or we were in Albuquerque?
No, we were back here by then. So this would have been it wasn't like the storyline, like this was a year later, right? The episode was set a year later
Right.
after the documentary
And
already
I didn't
came out.
like that at first. I was like, oh.
Right. I didn't like it either until we realized, okay, they were jumping ahead to two really cool scenes, which was a discussion panel, where it's set up like a real life cast of a TV show or something is coming on and doing this discussion panel, but still in universe, which I thought was really cool. But then also the Angela and Dwight wedding, which who would have ever guessed that was the thing that we wanted to build to,
Right.
which it was so cool. And then I remember nobody knew Steve Carell was going to be back for that episode. In fact, the world was pretty sure he wasn't going to be.
Everybody was begging for it.
Right. And it felt like they were shutting that down.
I do remember
so
that.
hard. Yeah.
And we were like, oh, he made it.
Like, yeah, I remember the build up.
I remember being sad, like it was just a little pop in and out, kind of thing. But
we got the little pop in and we got the little scene at the table, which I think was enough. I think that it was enough to put a bow on his story. We got to learn the little bit of lore that had happened since him leaving and him having kids and the stupid thing if he had two phones so he could have more room to have all the pictures
still
of his
being
kids.
Michael. Yeah. You know what? I've almost reached capacity on my phone and I'm about to just get another.
Oh man. But I do remember this was an episode that was, I feel like it was a good balance between giving you the things that you want while also be like, well, you didn't expect this to happen, but here it is.
Yeah.
The Dwight actually ending up being a pretty decent boss thing was cool. But the firing 3 people with cakes was really funny. Kevin getting fired and just sitting there sadly eating his cake was really funny. It was.
I mean,
satisfying.
It had to happen. I mean, how many mistakes has Kevin the accountant made over those years?
How many Clevins? The only finale I guess I wasn't super happy with spread out over the last several episodes, and that was Andy. Just like Andy being the boss, I feel like was the worst mistake that they made. And I kind of get why they chose him because him and Steve Carell kind of came up together. They were big on the Daily Show at the same time. Their bodies of work have crossed paths enough that they're very similar in tone when it comes to that style of humor. But the Andy character just never was set up to be a Michael Scott character.
Right.
Michael Scott is a dunce, but he's like a arrogant / humble, depending on his mood, kind of dunce, which makes him endearing. Andy was just a moron. Always presented as a moron. And then we were supposed to be like, okay, well, now we're watching him become a good boss. And that first season doesn't get you all the way there. And then the second season, he's gone for the first half of it because he's recording a movie.
Right.
And then that's becoming the story of, oh gosh, he's such a bad boss that he doesn't even care about the job.
Right.
And then he loses the job. And then he has to try and fight his way back into the job. And we were supposed to feel really happy about that. And then he quits again to go be on the singing competition and become a reality star beyond the documentary.
Yeah.
And then the finale is just like, yeah, none of that worked. And I embarrassed myself and I'm cool with it now. And like,
I just didn't care for the him and Aaron thing. I was just
it wasn't.
Yeah.
The truth is, they gave us Jim and Pam too soon. Most of these shows,
Like getting them together.
yeah, most of these shows,
I appreciate that.
And if
I
the
didn't
show
want
had ended,
10 years of her being
I agree.
engaged.
I wouldn't want that either. But if the show had ended after like 5, 6, even 7 seasons, sure. But like beyond that, it's like, man, there were so many more stories we could have told before we got to Jim and Pam actually being together. And we just didn't. And now we have to tease that Pam might have an affair with this microphone guy.
Yeah, that was stupid. That was stupid.
So it hurt to get to the finale. But luckily that made the finale a little bit more meaningful because they're like, okay, we know these last 2 seasons have not been ideal. Here's all the stuff you really, really want, including Michael Scott. Should sitcoms give us everything that we want at the end, or should they surprise us with something that we didn't expect?
I don't know. I'm okay with like a surprise, but not like just completely doing a 180 of what the show's been all about.
Oh, you mean like How I Met Your Mother? Where it's 9 seasons or 11 seasons, I don't know how long, of them telling the story of meeting the mother, all to end with him falling in love with Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hated it. And so many people hate it. I feel justified in saying, no, that was the wrong way to go. We liked the mother. We wanted the mother to be the happily ever after.
Right.
We didn't want this to be a grieving father telling his children a very long story about their now dead mom, only for the kids to be like, you know, you're in love with Aunt Erin. Dad, haven't you heard yourself talking? Do you remember mom's name? Like, that's the nonsense.
Do you remember mom's name?
That's the nonsense that I hated right there.
gosh.
But I love that show. The show's great.
Yeah. Just
ending
don't watch
sucked.
the last episode. and you'll be
Ending
fine.
absolutely sucked. Some things should just be saved from having a finale at that point. Man. But no, I feel like a good balance of that would still be good. I would like some surprises, but I don't want them to be such big surprises that it ruins the thing that you kind of really need the show to do to wrap up.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's my beef. If you're going to give me the ending I want in a show, don't ever bring it back. Because then you will change it and I will be upset.
That's true. That happened with Frasier.
Yeah.
Frasier was
He
big
is
deal.
supposed to
going
be
on.
in Chicago
And he
with the
did.
love of his life.
Yeah, and he did. That was the story. They did get together. They did get
But they
married, and
ain't
then they
together
got
anymore.
divorced,
Yeah.
and he left.
Yeah.
That's
No.
went back to Boston. I'm like, that hurts.
Yeah.
I would love to see a family man Frasier.
Yeah.
That would be a real growth
Yeah.
in the change of the show. It's like,
He
okay,
doesn't
the new
need a
series.
new lady every week.
He's this. Yeah. He's this, and he's a granddad. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see now he's the patriarch.
Yeah.
But
or
he's
you
not.
talk about Scrubs, you know?
Yeah.
The show, the
Don't
one
talk
we don't talk about.
Don't
Yeah.
talk about it. It
See?
ended in season 8. There is no season 9. And Bill Lawrence has come out and said that was a spinoff. And it was supposed to be called Scrubs Med School officially, but because it moved to a new channel, the channel really wanted to just call it Scrubs, so people would make sure to tune in and not feel like it was a spinoff. So it doesn't count, guys.
It's definitely a spinoff.
Exactly. It doesn't count. Scrubs ended in season 8, and it ended in one of the best finales ever. What sitcom didn't get the finale it deserved?
Oh,
I'm going to say a few, and then you're going to remember and realize.
probably because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
First off, you didn't watch this as much, but we did kind of watch it. My Name is Earl, where it was Earl having to right every wrong that he'd ever done. Like, he had the full list of people that he had hurt somehow, some way in his life. And the idea is he's got to make it right with all of them. And it ended on kind of a lot of several small cliffhangers. I don't remember all of them exactly. I think one of them is that he loses the list or he adds more to it or something like that. But then they end finding out that the son that he raised, he has two sons. One of them is clearly his and one of them is clearly not his. And then the finale, or the season 4 finale, they find out, well, actually, the one that he thought wasn't his is his, and the one that it wasn't his isn't his, or was his isn't his. So confusing. They swapped the kid of who was his and whose wasn't. Right. And that's just how it ends. They like to turn to the mom. They're like, "Can you explain this?" She goes, and then we're done. Black, and then we never come back to find out what the heck's happening here. He never finishes the list, and it just ends right there. No finale. But here's the one that'll hurt you: The Last Man on Earth.
Yes.
Such a great concept. Yeah. Hilarious show. Will Forte did so good. The whole cast did great, but Will Forte this was his perfect role. Apocalypse, end of the world thing. I honestly think the only reason they canceled it is because COVID existed. And they're like, I don't know if we want to just keep doing this. Everybody's feeling like it's the end times right now.
Right.
Let's not.
We didn't mean to make a show about like a real thing.
But it was so good. Do you remember how it ended? The cliffhanger.
They like find a bunch of people.
Yeah, like a whole underground city worth of people come to the surface and start marching toward where they are.
But I also feel like that's a fine ending because it was like about them being by themselves. Where the heck are they going to go from there? Now they're with a bunch of people.
But the bunch of people seemed
he was
menacing.
The last man on Earth.
But these people seemed menacing, not good.
So they're going to slaughter them all?
Yes. But we'll never know, will we? And Community got their weird Yahoo screen finale, but nobody can actually consider it the finale.
Because it's not allowed.
Because it's the prophecy.
Oh.
There's still a movie that has to come. It's still on the way. And that's the true finale.
It's never coming.
It better be the true finale. Also, it is coming. It's fully funded. Peacock's already announced it. It's coming. My fear is that it will be well received. I don't want it to be well received. I want the Community fans to love it. I don't want anybody else to care about it.
I see.
Because that's not enough people to justify a second one. Right? Because I don't want a second one. And they'll do a second one if it does really good. And I don't want that because it ruins how on earth are we going to have defied expectations all the way back starting at season 3 when they got a mid-season premiere or mid-season break that wasn't supposed to happen, and everyone was afraid, holy crap, they're going to cancel it. And then in season 4 they only gave it half a season, and then they're like, it's done after that. And we had the goatee campaign come in, be like, no, this is the darkest timeline, you can't cancel it, oh my gosh. So they give it a 5th season on I don't know where it was for the 5th season, but a different network, and they get that one season and then they cancel it after the 5th season. Then Yahoo Screen, a brand new streaming service that only lasted for a year, brought Community back, spent all their budget on it, and then folded. But we got that 6th season. How are we going to defy all those odds? Get 6 seasons, get to the movie, announce the movie, and then fumble the ball in the opposite direction and be like, and here's the second movie. No. It's 6 seasons in a movie. Has to be.
So you want the Community movie.
Yeah.
You want it to have everything ever that you ever wanted into it.
No.
But
I don't want to have everything I wanted.
You want it to suck?
No. I want it to be something completely different from what I could expect. I want it to be the most surprising way to end a show ever, because that is what Community is.
Okay.
Nothing but swerves.
But then you want everyone to hate it so they don't do any more.
I want it to only be appealing to Community fans. Established already Community fans.
Which is a small little puddle.
Exactly. I don't want anyone who hasn't already fallen in love with the show to even give it a second thought. Because that's how you know it will be a love letter to the fans and won't be ruined by doing another one.
Yeah. That show just morphed beyond the idea of the show.
It really did.
Hard.
First season was
So
fantastic.
much.
Second season was
I
even
started
better.
him, and I'm so sorry for the next hour on Community.
The third season was really, really good. Fourth season was wonky because they didn't have Dan Harmon and it felt off. There were some good episodes in it, but it felt off. Fifth season was like, oh boy, this one's rough. And then the sixth season was like, holy cow, this is really good again. And like, just stick the landing, Dan Harmon. Please.
Is he doing the movie?
Please. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody except
All right.
Chevy's back.
Oh, okay.
Confirmed. It's just
Wow.
about scheduling at this point.
Wow.
All right. Last question. Greatest sitcom ending of all time.
I don't know. You know, I don't pick favorites.
So MASH, we mentioned, had the most live views of a TV show ever. Mm-hmm. That's in the contention, I believe. Like you said, Frasier, until the revival. That ending I felt was very complete in a way that was satisfying without being like definitely happily ever after. I think
Right.
it's more like a lot of questions. Everybody's moving on in different directions. Dad got remarried. Niles and Daphne, which I think that was the perfect timing for a relationship. The Niles and Daphne storyline. Niles and Daphne have their first child.
Roz
takes over the radio station. And Frasier, we're told, is going to be moving on to TV news in San Francisco or whatever. And instead, the last minute, changes his mind and decides he's going to chase after who he thinks is the woman he's been waiting for his whole life.
And I liked
Beautiful
her,
ending.
too. I liked her
Yes.
storyline.
Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
It's the same situation with How I Met Your Mother. It's
Yeah.
like we get the most likable character to go with the main character that we've had the entire series. Almost nothing wrong with this character.
Right.
Someone that you fall in love with just as hard as the main character does. And then one of them did it really well until the revival when they ruined it. The other one was like, and who cares about her because she's dead. Let's go back to this girl that you probably hate at this point because she's pretty awful. They're all pretty awful. I think The Good Place would be in the running as one of the newer ones. Do you remember The
Okay.
Good Place ending where
I don't know if I saw it.
it was like you saw it. Positive.
I don't remember.
Okay. I'm positive we watched the ending together. But anyway, in case you haven't, I guess I don't want to spoil it for you, and we'll have to double check because if you haven't, then we're watching it soon. But anyway, it ended really well. If you haven't watched The Good Place, it's not biblically accurate, but it is a very funny take on what the afterlife could look like in the minds of people who have more of the generalized idea of quote unquote heaven.
Heaven
A
and
secular
hell,
version
kind
of heaven kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah. But it's very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny and very heartwarming. But I would say
I think I did watch it.
Yeah, I feel like you did. Most people, I believe, though, would say that the greatest sitcom finale was Newhart.
I mean,
So Bob Newhart was a comedian. Had the Bob Newhart Show.
okay.
Typical family sitcom thing. Then that show ended. And then he had Newhart. Same thing with Cosby. The Cosby Show existed, and then Cosby came later. And they were both similar, but completely different shows. Okay.
Okay.
The ending of Newhart is where he gets hit in the head with a baseball, wobbles out of consciousness, and he's waking up
And the
as the dad from the first show.
Gotcha.
with the wife from the first show and explaining that whole show was a dream.
Okay, I remember. I knew this existed.
Right. It was spoofed with Breaking Bad.
Yes.
They had that spoof afterwards where Walt wakes up with the Malcolm in the Middle mom. You're like, I was this drug kingpin. I took out the cartel.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
So good.
Yeah.
Such a great and like often parodied ending.
Uh-huh.
And I
Did
don't...
Did the Roseanne show do that?
No. What the Roseanne show did was that it ended its original run.
The original.
Was saying like this whole last season has actually been a novel that Roseanne has been writing to cope with the actual death of the dad that happened at the end of the previous season. Because there was like a scare that he was, I don't remember if it was like a heart attack or something, but there was a scare that he was going to die. That was kind of the cliffhanger. Then he comes back at the beginning of season 9 or the last season, whatever it was. And we think, oh, okay, all is well. And then we find out at the very end, nope, all wasn't well. And none of this happened. Which,
That's weird.
As finales go, okay. But then they had a revival. And he was back. And then a season into it, she makes a very wild tweet. And then she dies.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then that show, The Connors, I think is on its last season now.
It's
or
still going?
just ended. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I don't know how the finale went. I haven't been watching that show.
I
I was never into Roseanne as much. I watched a handful of episodes,
You know what
but
my
it's always
parents
like in
watched?
passing.
Married with Children.
Oh yeah, I watched that.
Yeah.
That did not get a finale at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not a single mention of this is our last episode or anything. Like no way. It was just a random butt episode.
Wow.
But this was also kind of before they ever expected this to be a recordable thing. Like
Right.
no one expected TV shows to be like, okay, in one day you can just sit down and watch the whole thing.
Them all. Right.
Whenever you want. Like
Right.
this was you got to catch it on TV anyway.
Right.
And this has been going on for X number of seasons, so it's in syndication. So what do you need a finale for? Every episode's just standalone. Enjoy it.
Right.
And now you can't do that. You can't do that. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Subscribe to the Nerd History Podcast via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@nerdhistoryltn, or check us out on the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. You can also find us at lovethynerd.com. We also have our daily Today in Nerd History video short and article that comes out every day at lovethynerd.com with more photos and nerdy facts about things that are happening each and every day. Deidra and I will be back in June to talk about needing chapstick real bad.
My lips hurt real bad.
You bring me my chapstick. But until then, I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Deidra.
And remember, in the past, present, and future,
Jesus loves you, nerds.